The wind slammed against the hospital windows as if trying to rip the entire corridor apart. Its shrill howl blended with the wailing ambulance sirens slicing through the thick gray rain. Chicago was enduring the worst storm of the month. And I, Julia Palmer, was battling premature labor pains, alone like a leaf torn from its branch. Each heartbeat pounded violently in my chest, frantic and desperate. Cold sweat crawled down my spine as another contraction squeezed every part of me. The baby was coming 2 weeks earlier than I had ever prepared for, and far earlier than anything I could handle. I gripped the edge of the ER bed, trying to breathe, but my lungs filled only with sharp, empty pain. "Ms. Palmer, please don't try to move," the nurse said as she pushed my bed toward the monitoring room. "Your cervix isn't fully dilated yet. We need to stabilize the fetal heart rate. I only caught half of it." The rest drowned under the relentless pounding of rain on the glass. I was scared, not of the pain, but of being alone. Terrified that my baby would enter this world in the middle of a storm, with no father in sight, no arms waiting for her. My teeth clenched as I reached for my phone inside the hospital gown. My fingers trembled as I opened my contacts, some naive part of me still clinging to the foolish hope that if I told Jake, he would come, even though he had abandoned me and our 8-month pregnancy 4 months ago. I opened the message box, typing through panic, my vision blurry with tears and pain. "Jake, please, I'm at St. Mary's Hospital. Something's wrong with the baby. I need you." A tear fell onto the screen. I hit send, my hands shaking too hard, my vision too blurry, my mind too chaotic to think. I didn't double-check the number. A contraction bent me forward, my world turning hazy. I didn't notice the phone slip from my hand. Didn't realize I had sent the message to a man I should never have crossed paths with. I must have passed out. When I woke, everything was blindingly white, the ceiling lights, the smell of disinfectant, the steady beep of the monitor like someone else's heartbeat beating for me. I had no idea how long I had been out, only that my belly felt light, empty, cold. I shot upright, my body shaking as if struck by lightning. "My baby! Where's my baby?" I cried, voice cracking. Pain from the incision tore through my abdomen like a sharp blade, forcing me to collapse against the bed rail. A nurse rushed in. "Ms. Palmer, please lie down. You just had an emergency. C-section, don't strain yourself." I gasped, blinking back tears. "Where's my baby?" My voice sounded like something torn open. The nurse softened, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Her tone wrapped in wool. "Your daughter is safe in the neonatal care unit. She weighed 3.3 kilos, completely healthy. A daughter, a baby girl." I exhaled sharply, sinking back onto the pillow. Relief flooded me so powerfully my eyes filled again. Happiness and pain tangled into one. "When can I see her?" "As soon as the doctor finishes checking on you. Just a little longer." She adjusted my IV and stepped out. The room fell silent. Only the rhythm of rain tapping on the glass remained steady. Cold. I turned to the small table beside me. My phone was placed neatly there, next to the small bag I'd brought from the women's shelter. I reached for it. The screen lit up with dozens of unread messages from an unknown number. I frowned, opened them. The first message froze my blood. "Who is this? What are you talking about, hospital?" The second, "Which St. Mary's are you at?" The third, "I'm on my way. Don't leave the room." The last sent just 10 minutes ago. "Julia Palmer, you shouldn't have made me find you like this." The phone slipped from my hand. He knew my name. In that moment, the door burst open. I flinched, expecting the nurse. But no. A man stepped inside. No knocking, no hesitation, no permission asked. It felt like he dragged the storm outside right into my hospital room. His black hair was damp with rain, his long wool coat soaked, heavy droplets trailing from his shoes onto the polished floor. But it was his eyes that made my blood freeze gray-blue cold, deep, sharp, like a blade slicing through glass. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a kind of authority that didn't come from a title, but from darkness itself. I knew him. Or at least, I had heard his name. Samuel Harrison. The man behind the Harrison Syndicate, the underground empire controlling nearly a third of Chicago, from the docks to the shadowed alleys of the South Side. And he was standing right in front of my bed. Words escaped me. What? What are you doing here? Samuel didn't answer immediately. He simply raised his phone, its cold blue screen glowing in the dim room. On it was my message. The message I thought I had sent to Jake. "You called me here," Samuel said, voice low and rough soft at the edges, but forged from steel. "And I'm not the kind of man who ignores a woman begging for help." My heart stuttered not from gratitude, but fear. It was a mist, I know. He cut in, his gaze slicing straight through my spine. "But I don't ignore a plea for help." He stepped closer. I instinctively curled back. "You're not well," Samuel continued, his eyes flicking to the incision beneath the blanket. "Your blood pressure crashed during surgery. Without someone to authorize your transfer and cover the emergency fees, you wouldn't be in this private room." I stared at him. Are you saying?" "Yes." I signed. The world went silent around me. Then, the sound of soft wheels. A nurse pushed in a small bassinet. Wrapped in a white blanket was a tiny baby girl, sleeping peacefully, lips pursed like silver rose petals under the light. Tears burst from me instantly, as if my heart had been waiting for this moment all my life. My trembling hands reached out. In that moment, Samuel said nothing, but his gaze shifted, softened, as if he was witnessing something sacred, something no storm could taint. I pressed my daughter to my chest. "Sweet girl, Mommy's here." I kissed her forehead, tears sinking into her hair. The world shrank down to this fragile miracle in my arms. But then, something strange caught my eye, the bracelet around her tiny wrist. Her name. My breath hitched. Baby girl Harrison. I jerked my head toward Samuel. "What did you do?" My voice broke. Samuel met my stare, his expression calm in a way that was almost terrifying. When there is no father present, someone must stand in that space to prevent mistakes in the records, he said quietly, every word cutting through me. I chose to stand there. I clutched my baby tighter, chest seizing. "You can't just decide that, not a decision." His voice didn't waver. A responsibility. I trembled. I didn't know how violent the storm outside was, but I knew with chilling clarity that I had awakened another storm, far more dangerous. Samuel stepped forward, stopping just a foot from my bed, tilting his head as he studied the baby in my arms. His voice dropped low, solemn, like a vow drawn from darkness itself. "Julia Palmer, from the moment you sent me that message, you and the baby stopped being strangers." My breath caught. A strange, heavy premonition slid into my chest, a sense that my life had just veered into a path I could never return from. And Samuel Harrison might just be the dark fate waiting at the end of it. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. The room felt strangely smaller, with Samuel Harrison standing just a few steps away. The air thickened, pressing against my chest with each passing second. My baby slept quietly in my arms, peaceful, unaware that the entire world had tilted toward a stranger, a man whose very presence carried the weight of a storm. Samuel's gaze lingered on the bracelet carrying his surname on my daughter's tiny wrist. His expression wasn't the cold, possessive claim I had feared. Instead, there was something that resembled a silent promise. I drew a long breath. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice tight but steady enough. Samuel didn't answer at once. He removed his rain-soaked black leather gloves and placed them on the chair beside the bed. His tailored suit, clearly expensive, was drenched, the droplets still clinging to the shoulders, shimmering under the harsh fluorescent light like shards of ice. "Do you understand what that message meant?" Samuel asked quietly. I shook my head. I told you, it was a mistake, no? His interruption was soft but firm. What I mean is, in my world, the word mistake doesn't exist. I held my child a little closer. Your world has nothing to do with me, but it has had everything to do with you since the moment you mentioned a hospital, an emergency, and a man who abandoned you. His eyes sharpened as if he had stripped away something too familiar, too painful. I turned my face away, biting my lip. I didn't want to talk about Jake anymore. Didn't want to reopen wounds that hadn't even had a chance to scar. Samuel watched me in silence, as if reading every subtle tremor on my face, every shaky breath. Then he said something that made the room tilt. Julia. I checked with the staff as soon as I arrived. If I hadn't signed the authorization for an emergency C-section, the baby might not have made it. I froze. What? They needed a responsible party. Someone to sign. Someone to cover the cost. He said it as if he were describing the weather. You didn't have anyone to do that for you. A wave of dizziness washed through me. It took several seconds before I could form words. Why? Why would you go that far for me? You don't even know who I am. Samuel lifted one shoulder in a quiet shrug. It's raining too hard tonight. There shouldn't be another child dying because they were left alone. His words were smooth, calm, almost cold. But something about them was too precise, too deep, too personal to be mere politeness. Samuel Harrison was not a kind man. All of Chicago knew that. But he had sat outside the operating room for hours. He had paid for a stranger. And now he stood here drenched, exhausted, yet present as if this had been his responsibility from the beginning. A soft knock interrupted the tension. A nurse entered with a tray of medication to check my vitals. Samuel stepped back toward the window, still and silent like a statue. But somehow, his silence made the room feel both safer and more dangerous than before. The nurse spoke gently. Palmer, we'll move you to recovery in a couple of hours. The surgery went well, and the baby is healthy. But you need rest. You lost a lot of blood. I nodded, trying to focus on her voice instead of the relentless presence standing across the room. Once the nurse left, Samuel finally spoke again. I still have a few questions. I sighed. I'm not a criminal for you to interrogate. He looked at me strangely. I need to know if there's anyone out there connected to you. Parents, siblings, close friends, anyone who might come looking for you? I said immediately, there's no one. Samuel nodded, as if he had expected that answer. And the baby's father. My chest tightened. He's gone, I whispered. For good. Dead, Samuel asked, his tone unreadable. No, he walked away from us. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Colder, sharper, heavier. Samuel didn't blink, but his breath deepened by a fraction. Clearly, he despised the idea. No woman should endure that alone. His voice was low, but its weight hit straight into my chest. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to face this man full of contradictions who could terrify me with one glance, and yet saved my child without asking for anything in return. A moment later, when I thought he might finally leave, Samuel placed something on the bedside table. A black metal card. No logo, no words, just a raised symbol. Harrison? I asked. Yes, he replied. It contacts me directly. No guards, no filters. I don't need you do. He cut me off without hesitation. You just became a mother. You have no family, no home, no support, and Chicago is not kind to vulnerable women. His words were brutally true. I pulled my daughter closer. Samuel stared at me for a long moment, as if battling something inside himself. Finally, he lowered his voice. Julia, I didn't come here to trap you in anything. I came because I know you can't fight alone right now. For the first time, I looked him straight in the eye without flinching. Those eyes were deep like the bottom of a dark lake, Not the darkness of crime, but the darkness of someone who had lost too much. Lightning flashed outside. The storm still screamed across the Chicago sky. Samuel's gaze drifted to the sleeping baby in my arms. His voice dropped to a whisper, so soft I nearly held my breath to hear it. This child. She won't grow up afraid like the children I once knew. Why do you care? I asked. Samuel didn't reply right away. His eyes shifted to the window far away, haunted by something old and painful. Then he spoke slowly. Because I once saw a woman begging for help, and no one got there in time. I didn't dare ask more. Whatever that memory was, it was a wound even time feared to touch. Several minutes passed in silence. Then Samuel straightened. I'll come back in the morning, he said. He picked up his gloves, put on his coat, and headed toward the door. But before leaving, he paused. Julia? He said my name in a low, quiet voice that sent a shiver down my spine. I looked up. Samuel held my gaze long, steady, intense enough to make my heartbeat stumble. If anything happens, even the smallest thing, press that card. He pointed to the black metal. I will come. I wanted to say I didn't need protection, that I didn't want to owe him, that I didn't want to be tangled in his world. But when I opened my mouth, the words vanished. I simply nodded. Samuel looked at the baby one last time. His expression softened in a way that didn't seem possible on a face carved from ice. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed. Only when his heavy footsteps faded down the hallway did I realize my heart was racing. Not from fear, but from the strange, quiet certainty that I had just met the man who would change my life forever. I woke in the middle of the night to the soft, trembling cry of my daughter. The hospital room lay wrapped in the dim, golden glow of the wall lamp, so quiet, the sound of my own heartbeat felt loud. Her tiny face was flushed red, her lashes wet and delicate like fragile blades of grass. I tried to sit up, pain shot through me, the familiar ache of a post-surgery body, but I managed to pull her bassinet closer and cradle her against my chest, my hands trembling as I stroked her tiny spine. Just the two of us, alone in this cold room. Samuel Harrison had left nearly 2 hours ago, yet his presence still lingered like a carved imprint on the air. I rocked my baby gently, but my mind drifted to chaotic fragments of thought, to his deep, unreadable gaze, to the bracelet bearing the name Harrison, to the unfinished story he almost revealed before he left. And worse, the question gnawing at me. I didn't know whether to push him away or pull him closer. About an hour later, after she finally fell asleep again, I leaned back against the headboard. Exhaustion burned behind my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The hallway lights cast a thin line under the door, silent as if even they were waiting for something. Or maybe I was waiting. The thought startled me. I exhaled sharply, irritated with myself. Why was I waiting for a man as dangerous as him? Why could one quiet sentence from him shake me this deeply? I drew the blanket to my chest, determined to banish every stray thought. But minutes later, the sound of heavy, steady footsteps echoed down the hall. Deep, purposeful, belonging to someone who knew exactly where he walked and what he owned. I thought I was imagining it. But the steps grew louder, closer. The door opened. My grip on the blanket tightened. Samuel stood there. No coat. Just a fitted black shirt clinging to broad shoulders and defined muscles. The top buttons undone to reveal warm skin still carrying the faint scent of rain. His hair was dry now, but uncombed. His face, in the muted light, looked different, still sharp. Still cold, but tinged with exhaustion. Less perfect. Less untouchable. Why did you come back? I asked quietly, my voice softer than I intended. Samuel closed the door, offering no explanation. He stepped inside slowly, as if the darkness behind him followed every movement. You couldn't sleep, he said, not as a question and observation. I frowned. You're watching me now. No. He moved closer to the bed. I guessed. And I was right. I couldn't deny it. A heavy silence stretched between us, full of things unsaid. The distance between us was small enough that I caught his scent cedarwood, night rain, and something unnameable, something carved from a man who had walked through too many shadows. You didn't have to come back, I whispered. I'm fine. Samuel tilted his head slightly, his gaze shifting to the sleeping baby in the bassinet. I need to make sure you're both safe. You've already done enough. You don't owe me anything. For some reason. That made his shoulder tense barely. But I noticed. Samuel didn't look at me. His gaze drifted to the storm outside, the rain falling thick as fog. It's not a debt, he said softly. There are things you don't just walk away from. I opened my mouth to ask, but he turned back to me before I could. Julia Palmer, he said, my name rumbling from his chest so deeply my heart faltered. I've seen too many desperate people in my life, but tonight, when I saw your message, something in me refused to leave. His eyes met mine, cold, deep, sharp enough to uncover every layer of me. I swallowed. Are you pitying me? Samuel dipped his head slightly. And for the first time, I caught a flicker of helplessness, not weakness, not the helplessness of a man who always controlled everything except this moment. I don't pity anyone, he said slowly, especially not you. Then what is it? He studied me for several long seconds, weighing something. At last, he answered, a warning? I stiffened. A warning. Samuel pulled a chair closer and sat, our distance shrinking to half an arm's length. There are people outside looking for opportunities. He said, they know I'm at this hospital tonight. And if any of them saw me walk into this room, he paused. You become a weak link. A cold wave ran down my spine. You're joking, I whispered, trying to sound calm. I never joke. Fear rose, but strangely, so did another feeling, the quiet, unsettling sense of being protected. So, should I be afraid of you? Or your enemies, I murmured. Samuel answered without hesitation, I stared into his sharp, unreadable expression and found no lies there. Why are you pulling me into your world? I whispered. He shook his head. No, you pulled me into yours. I sent the wrong message, no, he said, eyes glinting. That wasn't a mistake. That was desperation. And desperation is a powerful force. Do you know something? Julia is desperate. People often reach those who have already lost too much. I froze. Something shifted between us, then something neither of us could take back. After a while, Samuel rose to his feet. I'm leaving now. The storm is easing, but there will be someone guarding this door until morning. No one enters except nurses. I frowned gently. You don't have to do that. I do, he replied simply. You have a newborn. My priority is her safety. My throat tightened. He called her softly, intentionally, as if protecting my daughter had already become instinct for him. When he turned toward the door, I surprised myself by calling out Samuel. He stopped. Didn't turn, just stopped. My voice came out small. Thank you. A moment of stillness. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. Then Samuel turned slightly, his eyes clouding with something raw, something touched in the place he hid most carefully. I'm not used to being thanked, he said, voice rough. But I mean it. I whispered. He looked at me for another second. In the dim light, his gray-blue eyes glimmered with something deep, so deep I didn't dare name it. Samuel pushed the door open, but before stepping out, he said something that sent my heart free-falling. Sleep. Julia, when you wake up, I'll still be here. The door closed. Silent. But my heart refused to quiet. I woke to the first light of morning filtering through the thin curtain, painting the room with a gentle, pale glow. No more storm. No more howling wind rattling the windows. Chicago was calm again. I blinked several times, letting my mind claw its way out of the fragmented dreams that clung to me through the night. Some from the lingering ache of my incision, and the rest from Samuel Harrison, the man who had said, "When you wake, I'll still be here." I turned my head to the left. My heart stopped. He really was there. Samuel sat in the chair by the window, head tilted slightly back, eyes closed, shoulders relaxed. Morning sunlight warmed the hard lines of his cheekbones and the sharp bridge of his nose, softening the coldness he always carried. For the first time, he didn't look dangerous. He didn't look untouchable. He looked like a man exhausted, stripped bare from carrying the weight of a world made of shadows. I stared longer than I meant to, long enough to forget to breathe. There was something unexpectedly gentle about him in this moment, not because he tried to be, but because he seemed too worn to hold on to the steel exterior he wore like armor. The baby stirred softly in her bassinet. Samuel's eyes opened. I jerked slightly, as if caught watching him. His gaze still that piercing gray blue, but softer now flicked from me to the baby. "She's awake." His voice was low, warm in a way I wasn't prepared for. Before I could answer, Samuel stood. The movement was fluid, quiet, predatory, yet controlled, like a big cat choosing not to strike. He leaned over the bassinet, and I would never forget what I saw next. Samuel looked at my daughter with an expression no one could call distant, not indifferent, not detached, but as if he were looking at something precious, something he had once lost. A part of me softened without permission. "You stayed here all night?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. Samuel straightened. He didn't deny it, didn't boast either. He simply said, "I told you I'd be here when you woke. I don't break promises." His words tightened something in my chest. Not out of romance, out of truth. A man like him rumored to be ruthless, cold, yet he kept his word as if it were sacred. I shifted to pick up my baby, but the movement strained my incision. I inhaled sharply, nearly losing my balance. Samuel stepped forward instantly, placing a steady hand on my elbow. "Careful." Just 2 words, but warmer than the entire sunlit room. "I can handle it," I murmured, trying to stay composed. "I know." His voice was steady. "But you don't have to handle everything on your own." I wanted to argue, but the way he looked at me made the words tangle in my throat. A gentle knock broke the moment. The nurse entered, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, Ms. Palmer." She glanced at Samuel, hesitating only a second before recovering her professional tone. "And good morning, Mr. Harrison?" He nodded slightly. I frowned. "You know the staff here, only the ones I need to know," Samuel said without elaborating. The nurse examined my incision and asked standard questions about pain, breathing, dizziness. I answered, though my attention drifted always to the man leaning against the wall, arms folded, watching everything. Not with suspicion, but with vigilance. When the nurse left, Samuel stepped closer. "The doctor will decide today when you can be discharged." "Yes." I looked down at my daughter sleeping on my chest. "I still haven't figured out where we should go." Samuel didn't speak. He was silent long enough that I had to look up. His gaze locked on mine deep, unreadable. "Julia," he said slowly, "you can't go back to the shelter." I tightened my hold on my baby. "That's the only place I have left." "No." His voice dropped, steady and unyielding. "It's not safe for a newborn. And it's not safe for you. You don't get to decide. I'm not talking about authority." Samuel cut in gentle but unmistakably firm. "I'm talking about reality." The blunt truth in his tone irritated me and unsettled me at once. "You think I can't take care of myself?" I snapped quietly. Samuel studied me, my incision, my exhaustion, the fear still lingering beneath my eyes. "You nearly died on that operating table," he said without raising his voice. "The baby came early. You have no family, No stable home, no income, no insurance to handle postnatal care. The truth hit harder than anger. And Chicago. His eyes darkened. This city devours the vulnerable. Somehow I sensed he wasn't just talking about me. He was talking about himself. If I hadn't come back last night, do you really think you'd have made it to morning unharmed? I didn't answer. He didn't need me to. Samuel stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my chin upward to hold his gaze. I'm not trapping you. I'm not taking your freedom. I'm offering something. Offering what Samuel's gaze drifted to my daughter. And in the soft morning light, the man who terrified half the city suddenly looked gentle. A place with locks you can trust, he said. A room for her. Help, food, medicine, safety. I held my breath. You mean, you're home? Samuel didn't answer immediately, but the way he looked at me was more than enough. That house has space for 12 people, he said quietly. But I've been walking into it alone for years. It's cold, empty, without breath. My heartbeat stumbled. He looked at me, unblinking, gaze so deep it nearly stole my air. Julia, he whispered my name. I want you and the baby there, until you recover, until you can stand firm on your own. I clutched my daughter closer, my pulse erratic. But why me? My voice trembled despite my efforts. Samuel tilted his head slightly, eyes shadowing with something old, something painful. Because your message arrived at the exact moment it had to, he said softly, though darkness threaded beneath his words. And some things, once they touch you, you can't leave behind. My breath hitched. Samuel, I don't know if I can trust you. He didn't get angry. He didn't push. He simply stepped back, gaze softening in a way I didn't think possible. You don't have to trust me right away, he said gently. But believe this, I will not hurt you. And I won't let anyone else hurt you. In the warm glow of morning, his words sounded like a vow. No poetry, no sweetness, just truth so real it scared me more than anything. Then he added, give me a chance to prove my presence isn't the danger you think it is. I inhaled slowly, torn between resisting and surrendering. The door burst open. A nurse rushed in, breathless. Mr. Harrison, sir, you need to see this. Samuel turned. In her hand was a phone, displaying an alert from the security team. He glanced at it. His expression darkened instantly, as if last night's storm hadn't disappeared, as if it had just awakened in his eyes. He looked at me. Julia. His voice was low, sharp, chilling enough to make my heart lurch. We need to leave. Right now. The air in the hospital room shifted the moment Samuel looked at the phone screen the nurse had handed him. The cold composure he always wore like armor fused into his skin, tightened instantly into something razor-sharp and alarming. Instinctively, I clutched my daughter closer to my chest. What's happening? I whispered, my voice smaller than the faint wind outside the window. Samuel didn't answer immediately. He returned the phone to the nurse, but his blue-gray eyes had taken on the color of a rising storm. The main lobby cameras picked up signs of an intrusion, he said, each word falling like a nail hammered into the air. One of them mentioned my name. A chill ran through me. You. What does that mean? Who mentioned you? Samuel's glance flicked toward the door, as if calculating distance and escape routes. Not someone good, he said. And definitely not someone you want to meet. That was all it took for my heart to drop straight into my stomach. My voice cracked. Is this about your enemies? Samuel turned toward me. I had never seen his eyes like that, not just hard, but worried. A worry so carefully buried that I almost wouldn't have recognized it, if I hadn't been trembling enough to feel it. You and the baby are in danger. His voice lowered, firm and final. We're leaving. Now. There was no time to think, no time to argue. My pulse pounded so loud it drowned out everything else as Samuel stepped toward the bassinet and surprisingly gently lifted my daughter into his arms. He held her with a care so deliberate it stunned me, like she was the one thing on earth he refused to harm. I wanted to protest, to pull her back, but somehow, his arms felt safe, and that terrified me more than the danger outside. He placed the baby against my chest, tucked a thin blanket around her, and placed a steady hand under my elbow as he helped me stand. "Can you walk?" he asked. I nodded, not because I felt strong, but because there was no other choice. Each step sent a burn through my incision. But Samuel stayed close, one hand hovering behind my back as if the slightest stumble would make him catch me before gravity had the chance. When we stepped into the hallway, I saw 4 men in black suits waiting. Hard faces, sharp eyes. They scanned every shadow like trained predators. One of them nodded. "The back route is clear, sir. The vehicle is ready." Samuel only gave a short, clipped nod, then looked at me. "Stay close." I held my baby tighter. "Samuel, if those people really came for us, I won't let them touch you." His voice dipped to something like a vow. "Especially not when you just got out of surgery." That last sentence was so soft I almost thought I imagined it. Samuel didn't repeat himself. He simply took my arm, not harshly, but firmly enough to guide me. We moved down the anti-slip hallway, passing silent hospital rooms still swallowed in early morning calm. The neon lights overhead cast pale reflections on the floor, making our shadows blend into one as we hurried along. At the end of the corridor, a heavy steel door stood ajar the staff emergency exit. A guard signaled. "Stairs to the lower level. Cameras haven't caught us yet." Samuel pushed the door open, and a blast of cold air rushed in. I shivered. "Watch the step," Samuel murmured, his hand dropping gently to my waist. I nearly flinched. The warmth of his touch startled me more than the cold air. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching the steps, making sure I didn't fall. Yet the steadiness of his palm sent a strange, confusing tremor through my chest. When we reached the basement, a black SUV idled in the dark, engine running, but headlights off. A man opened the rear door and gestured for me to get in first. "Wait," Samuel said softly. He turned me toward him and adjusted the blanket around the baby, pulling it higher to protect her small neck. "It's cold down here," he said simply. "No draft should touch her." I stared at him, and for a moment too long, a moment my heart squeezed. He didn't belong to anything soft or safe. He wasn't gentle by nature, but he knew how to keep a baby warm, with the kind of care that came from something old, something broken. Samuel helped me into the SUV. Once I was settled, he lifted my daughter just long enough to place her in a proper infant seat, securing each strap with practiced precision. You've done this before," I whispered. His eyes paused for a breath. "I looked after a child once," he said quietly. "A long time ago." I wanted to ask more, but before the question could form, the car door shut, cutting off the moment. Samuel got in from the other side. 2 guards sat in front. "Drive." The SUV shot forward. As we slipped into the sparse morning traffic, a painful awareness hit me. I had left the last clearly safe place behind the hospital. Fear crawled up my spine. "Samuel, are you sure this is necessary? What if they weren't after us?" "They don't need to know you," Samuel said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "They only need to know I was there." "So they're after you, not me." "No," he said it slowly, deliberately. "They're after anything weaker than me." Cold swept through me. Silence filled the car, broken only by the hum of the engine. I looked at him. Samuel sat angled slightly toward the window, one hand resting loosely on his knee, but his eyes never stopped scanning the road. Broad shoulders tense, jaw clenched, every muscle ready to block the world from reaching us. "You dragged me into your world," I whispered. By accident or not, Samuel didn't blink. "Not you," he said. "Your message." I said nothing. "But I chose to stay," he added, gaze locked on the road. "And when I choose, I never walk back." The certainty in his tone made me want to trust him and run from him at the same time. "You're not someone I can rely on," I whispered. "You're too dangerous." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "I never claimed to be safe." "Then why do you keep pulling me closer, Canon Spastain?" Then he answered, "Because you have no one else. And I'm not going to watch another desperate soul fall into the wrong hands." The words pricked something in my chest. "Samuel," I said softly. He didn't look at me, but I felt him listening. "I thought you were the worst person I could meet, when I was at my weakest." Samuel raised a brow slightly. "And now?" he asked. I looked at my daughter Small, protected in the seat beside me. A flash of light swept across Samuel's face, carving a stark contrast between strength and an old, quiet grief hidden beneath. "Now," I said slowly, "I can't tell if you're danger or salvation." Samuel didn't respond, but his hand tightened just slightly on his knee, enough for me to know my words hit deeper than he wanted me to see. The SUV turned right. Suddenly, the brakes slammed hard. My heart lurched violently. "What's happening?" Samuel instinctively threw an arm in front of me. Ahead, blocking the road to the highway, was a silver truck. No lights, no plates. Samuel's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Julia, get down. Hold the baby." My pulse thundered. "Is it them?" Samuel stared straight ahead, eyes dark as flint. "Yes," he said. "And they're not here to talk." Samuel wasn't wrong. I had to get down. And I did, curling over my daughter, holding her so tightly it felt as if letting go even a fraction would allow the world outside to swallow us whole. But my heart refused to follow logic. It beat wildly, not just from fear, but from something darker, more dangerous, more beautiful than I dared name. Samuel was shielding us with his entire body. He leaned over me, one hand cupping the back of my head and pushing me down beneath the seat, the other unfastening the baby's straps in one swift, practiced motion. He moved with the precision of someone who had lived his whole life inside the teeth of danger. "Keep her head protected," he murmured, voice low and steady. "No matter what happens, don't let her head jolt." I swallowed hard and tried to breathe evenly. "Samuel, they're going to shoot." "Possibly," he replied without hesitation. "But I'm here." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe him so desperately it terrified me. The engine of the truck ahead rumbled. Through the narrow gap between the front seats, I caught a glimpse of 3 men climbing out of the vehicle, blocking our path. 3 men, hooded, heavy jackets, and carrying long guns. My breath shattered. "Samuel, they're really... don't look." He gently but firmly pulled my hand down. I tried, but I heard everything. Their approaching footsteps. The metallic clacks of guns being cocked. A heavy thud against our hood. I flinched, clutching my daughter tighter. She stayed eerily quiet, as if she sensed the danger herself. Samuel didn't move. He gave a subtle signal to the front guards to stay absolutely still. "Do exactly as I say," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We move only when I give the word." My heartbeat climbed into my throat. A distorted voice echoed outside, rough, disguised Mr. Harrison. "Where do you think you're going with that little package? Were they talking about me or my baby?" "Both," Samuel answered with silence, the kind that made enemies step back or lose control. The man outside let out an ugly laugh. "No negotiation?" "Huh, fine, I'll start counting." Samuel muttered to the driver, "Prepare to reverse. When I say now, you commit. No hesitation." My legs trembled. "Samuel, if they shoot?" "My bullets are faster," he said. It was an absurdly arrogant line, but he said it like a man who knew it was true. The man outside began counting. Samuel lowered himself over me further, his hand firm on my shoulder, warm and grounding, as if trying to steady the panic swelling inside me. 2. "Samuel," I whispered, voice cracking. "I'm scared." I didn't know what I expected: a reassurance, a lie, a promise. But what he said made my breath stop entirely. I'm scared too. I stared up at him in shock. Samuel didn't look away. His blue-gray eyes weren't storms anymore. They were brutally, painfully honest. I'm scared of losing you, he breathed. Both of you. My heart stopped. In that moment, with the countdown outside and gunshots seconds away, I realized his fear was real. 3, Samuel roared. Now! The SUV lurched backward with violent force, tires screeching across the wet concrete, flinging water and wind everywhere. I curled over my daughter, pain ripping across my abdomen as the momentum pulled me backward. A gunshot cracked sharp and deafening, close enough to shake the frame of the car. Then another, and another. Return fire exploded from Samuel's men. Everything was chaos. But Samuel didn't flinch. He shielded me with his entire body, pulling my head to his chest, his breath warm against my hair. The scent of him, cedarwood and metal, closed around me like a cocoon. He barked orders to the driver. Take the right alley. Don't stop. We veered into a narrow passage between buildings. Wind slammed into us. The baby stirred. My hands shook uncontrollably, eyes squeezed shut. Until Samuel placed his palm on my cheek, a steady, grounding pressure that made me look up. Julia, he said, his voice low, steady, impossibly gentle. Breathe. I've got you out. I opened my eyes. He was there, so close I could see flecks of light in his blue-gray irises. For the first time, they weren't cold, weren't sharp. They were frightened. Are you hurt? I gasped. They didn't touch me, he said softly. Not while you and the baby are here. The way he said it. God, it shook me deeper than the gunfire. It took almost 10 minutes for the SUV to break free of the danger zone, finally slipping onto a side street toward River North. When the driver announced we were clear, I was still trembling. Samuel ordered the car to stop beneath a steel bridge. The dim shadows softening his face made him look less like a storm, and more like a man who had just survived one. Let me see her. He said, not a command, but a quiet priority. I loosened the blanket. She was sleeping peacefully, lips pursed like a rosebud. Samuel exhaled a long, shaky breath he had been holding since the chase began. He reached out, fingers hovering over her blanket close, but not touching her skin. He was trembling in his own way. Then he looked at me. Julia Palmer, he said, voice low but no longer cold. I won't let that happen again. Ever. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening with something that wasn't fear anymore. Why? Samuel, I breathed. Why are you doing all this? For us, Samuel held my gaze for a long moment too long. No masks, no lies. Because, he said quietly, I once lost someone I should have protected. My breath caught, and I won't let history repeat itself. In that moment, Samuel Harrison no longer looked like a mafia boss. He looked like a man wrestling his own darkness, and this time, choosing to stand on my side of it. He turned to the driver. Take us home, I stiffened. Home. You're home. Samuel didn't glance back. There's no safer place. I held my daughter close, and for the first time, the fear wasn't the loudest thing inside me anymore. What overshadowed it was the terrifying, undeniable feeling that I had stepped into a story no one escapes from once they enter the first chapter. Chicago at dusk looked like a colossal creature just waking golden lights rising from skyscrapers, painting the sky with a luxury glow, while shadows crawled into narrow alleys, swallowing secrets as if they were meant to disappear forever. Samuel's SUV turned off the main road and slipped into a quiet riverside neighborhood. Then I saw it his house, a red brick townhouse with classic architecture and sharp, modern glass panels. Not excessively large, but it carried the same proud, cold aura as the man standing beside me. Samuel opened the car door first. A guard stepped forward to take the baby carrier. Samuel turned to me. "I'll carry you out," he said simply. I can walk." "Julia." His voice was low and unmistakably in order. "You're 7 days post-surgery." I wanted to argue. He didn't give me the chance. He slid an arm beneath mine and lifted me from the car with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. His warmth trailed up my spine, a touch unintentional, yet thick with intention. When my feet touched the ground, it took a full second before I realized Samuel wasn't letting go. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Not much. You're a terrible liar." He looked directly into me, as if he could see every cracked part of the strength I was pretending to have. I looked away, heart pounding. The front door opened with a soft scan of a fingerprint. This wasn't just a house. It was his house, where he ate, slept, existed, and now he was pulling me and my baby into it. Inside, the air felt wide and elegant in a cold, curated way. Dark wood floors, white walls, minimalist artwork, everything unnervingly neat, too silent. The kind of silence belonging to someone who lived surrounded by order, not comfort. A guard carried the baby carrier downstairs, then disappeared, leaving only Samuel and me in the large, echoing space. "I'll show you your room," Samuel said. Walking up the stairs ahead of me, the second floor is fully secured. Electronic locks, internal cameras, and no one enters without my permission. That sounds more like a prison than a home. Samuel paused one step above me and turned. The wall light cast sharp shadows across his face, sharpening every edge. "You're in my house," he said slowly, "and I won't let anyone touch you." It should have sent a chill down my spine. Instead, something in me, something foolish, something fragile felt safe. Samuel pushed open a pair of double doors. I stopped breathing. The bedroom was larger than the hospital room I'd given birth, in floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. The city lights reflected in ribbons of blue. A king-sized bed with gray satin sheets, a reading chair, a small bookshelf, and next to it, through a half-open door, a nursery. I stepped inside. Stunned. Soft cream-colored walls, warm golden lighting, a small wooden crib neatly made, a dresser filled with baby clothes arranged by size. A faint scent of baby powder lingered in the air. None of this existed by accident. "You prepared all of this," I whispered. "I'm not letting you sleep in the same bed as the baby," Samuel said. "Too dangerous. And you're still in pain." "No, I mean, all of this." Samuel frowned, as if he didn't understand why I was surprised. "I told you, when I choose to protect someone, I follow it through." I turned toward him. "And because you feel guilty about the person you lost." Samuel's eyes darkened. For a moment, pain flickered through the blue-gray, a shadow across still water. Then he answered. "Not only because of that." I opened my mouth to ask, but a tiny wail rose from the crib, cutting off the question. Samuel was at the crib instantly, fast but controlled. I followed, heart squeezing when I saw my daughter squirming awake, her little face flushed. "Let me," I said, lifting my arms. Samuel placed her in my hands with astonishing care, slow. Sure, as if he'd done it thousands of times. When I held her against my chest, he stepped back half a pace, eyes fixed on every one of our movements. I glanced up at him and felt my pulse misfire. "Why are you staring?" I asked. Samuel answered with disarming honesty. "You look like a family I never had." The air stilled. I bent over the baby, hoping he wouldn't see how hard those words hit. After settling her back in the crib, I stepped out onto the small balcony. The river breeze was cold enough to raise goosebumps, but the distant city lights helped me breathe a little easier. I didn't hear Samuel approach until he said quietly, "You're cold." I turned. He had already draped a soft shawl over my shoulders. His hand brushed my neck, not intentionally, but enough to make every nerve in my body tighten like a drawn string. "Thank you," I whispered. Samuel stood beside me, leaning an elbow lightly on the railing. "Julia, you asked me in the car." He still didn't look at me, eyes on the dark water below. "Why I'm doing all this for you." My heart quickened. "I remember." Samuel tilted his head slightly, drawing a slow breath. "The one I lost wasn't only my sister." He paused. "It was her daughter." I turned to him in shock. "I thought they told me it was complications." Samuel said quietly, "That was only half the truth." My voice thinned. "And the other half?" He looked at me then, past my fear, past my guarded heart, straight into the deepest part of me. "They died because someone wanted to get to me." My chest tightened painfully. I didn't reach them in time. Samuel continued, voice fraying at the edges. "The baby, so small, never breathed more than a minute. I couldn't do anything." The silence cracked with the weight of a broken breath. "Since that day," he said, "any child in danger, I can't stand still." And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just protection, not guilt, not obligation. This was atonement from a man who had never forgiven himself. "Samuel," I whispered. He stepped closer, close enough that the air between us tightened. "I won't let anyone harm you," he said. "I won't let history repeat itself." My heart trembled. "But I'm not the person you lost." "No." His voice cut through the night like a blade. "You're the person I chose." The words struck harder than gunfire, sweeter than the way he watched me, and far more dangerous. "Samuel, you're going too far. You only think that because you don't see it," he said softly. But I reached this point long before tonight. I stepped back and hit the balcony railing. No more distance left. Samuel stood a heartbeat away. "If you stay here," he said carefully, "you'll be absolutely safe. But if you want to leave..." My fingers gripped the shawl. "And you'll let me go." Samuel lowered his forehead toward mine so close I forgot how to breathe. "I won't stop you," he said, his voice razor soft, painfully honest. "But I will never stop watching over you." The river wind lifted my hair. City lights shimmered in his eyes, two storms about to break. "Because you don't know," Samuel whispered. "You've stepped into a place with no return." My throat tightened. "What place?" He lifted my chin gently, his gaze locking onto mine like a vow whispered in the dark. "My heart." Samuel was still standing close to me, too close. So close that a single uneven breath could push everything past the point of control. He had just said I'd stepped into his heart, a sentence that should only belong in romance novels. Yet it slipped from the mouth of a Mafia boss, whose eyes looked at me as if I were the one thing he could not afford to lose, not again. Not ever. I turned away first, forcing myself to swallow the chaos spinning wildly in my chest. "You shouldn't say things like that," I whispered, fingers tightening around the edge of the shawl. Samuel was silent for a few seconds. Then he answered, without the slightest attempt to soften it. "I only say things I won't take back." The weight of that made me step back, though my feet were already touching the railing. I needed distance. I needed clarity. I needed to escape the way his gaze stripped through every wall I'd built around myself. "I need to check on the baby," I said, grabbing onto logic like a lifeline. "I need to make sure she's okay. Go," Samuel said, moving aside, but his eyes didn't leave me, not even for a moment. My daughter was sleeping in the crib. Tiny lips softly pursed, her face pink as a new petal. I stood watching her for a long time, not because I was worried, but because I needed time for my heart to slow down. Behind me, I felt Samuel standing at the doorway, not entering, not disturbing the silence, just there like a large, steady shadow, watching every small shift in the room. "I've never seen anyone sleep that peacefully," he murmured. I thought he meant the baby. But then I realized his eyes weren't only fixed on the crib. They flicked to me, then back to the baby, then to me again. And that made me inhale sharply. "I'll stay here with her," I said, unsure what exactly I was resisting. "If you have work, you can go." Samuel stepped one pace into the room. "You want me to leave? I just don't want to inconvenience you." "You don't inconvenience me," he said, a low, steady voice with the faintest warmth. "Not even when you're afraid of me." I spun around. It felt like he was reading my mind. "Julia." He said my name like a quiet breath. "Don't keep stepping back." My hands trembled. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs. "You make me confused." "Then let me be clear." Samuel stepped in completely, standing just one stride away, not touching but close enough that I was breathing air he'd already warmed. "I saw you alone in that hospital room, holding fear no one cared about." His voice was low, cold-edged, but overflowing with restrained emotion. I couldn't bear that image. My throat tightened. "But you don't have any obligation." "Correct," he cut in instantly. "I have no obligation. I choose." I stared at him, shaken. "What do you want from me?" Samuel didn't answer at once. He lowered his gaze briefly, stopping on my lips for a second, then lifted it, locking onto my eyes with devastating precision. "I want you to stay." Slowly, like each word carved itself into the air. "I want to protect you. I want you to trust me." I shook my head faintly. "You can't force trust." "No," he agreed. "But I can give you no reason to leave." My heart lurched. I wanted to ask, why me? Why a broken woman with nothing left but a newborn in her arms? But I never got to ask. Because the doorbell rang a sharp, cold ding that sliced through the silence of the house. Samuel changed instantly. The softness disappeared. His face hardened into the man who had survived too many wars in the shadows. He turned to me. "Stay here. Do not go downstairs. Lock the door behind you." "Why, who's outside?" Samuel didn't answer right away. His expression said everything the person outside wasn't a guest. "Harrison." I called suddenly, the name slipping out instinctively, pushed by fear. "Be careful." Samuel stared at me for a long, heavy second. Then he nodded as if my worry mattered more to him than he wanted to admit, and he disappeared downstairs. I locked the door. My heartbeat pounded against my throat. From below, muffled sounds drifted upward, footsteps. A man's voice, deep, rough, not Samuel's. A chair scraping. A metallic clink like a gun set on the table. I held my daughter, sinking onto the edge of the bed, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I listened. A deep voice snapped. "You vanished for a week. My people thought you were dead," Samuel replied, voice tight with cold steel. "I don't die that easily, so the rumors are true. You're hiding someone." My breath hitched. Samuel didn't answer right away. "It has nothing to do with you," he said at last. The man laughed sharply. Well, cold-hearted Harrison has someone he wants to keep now." A deadly silence followed. I could feel the air downstairs tighten like a pulled wire. The other man lowered his voice, "Family. Or a woman." My heart slammed against my ribs. Then a sound so soft it could have been a whisper, but sharp enough to signal war. The slide of a gun, chambered. Samuel had drawn his weapon. I couldn't hear their words next, only a crash of a chair. Heavy footsteps. A rough grunt of pain. Then silence. A silence that made the hair on my arms stand up. I shot to my feet. I couldn't sit there like a prisoner while danger wrapped itself around the man protecting me. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The wood floor felt ice cold under my bare feet. Halfway down the hall, Samuel's voice floated up low, furious, coiled like thunder. "Don't ever speak her name, her me." The other man gasped through what sounded like pain. "I didn't know you'd gotten soft." "I'm not soft." Samuel cut him off, voice sharp as a blade. "I just have something I can't lose." I froze. My heart skipped so violently it hurt. And that includes her. Samuel continued, his tone dropping into something almost confessional. And the baby. I gripped the railing, dizzy. Was that the first time he had said it out loud to someone else? A chair scraped. Then Samuel's cold voice again. Get out of my house, and forget what you heard. A beat of silence. Then the front door slammed. Samuel remained downstairs. I slipped back into the bedroom and closed the door gently. My knees were weak, not from fear, but from his words. Words that crushed and lifted and terrified me all at once. Not a man who hid his feelings. Not a mafia boss who kept the world at arm's length. But Samuel Harrison, who had just told another man that my daughter and I were something he couldn't lose. I sat beside the crib, heart full of confusion, fear, gratitude, and something I didn't dare name. Minutes later, a soft knock touched the door. Julia. I recognized his voice instantly. May I come in? I inhaled deeply. Yes. The door opened. Samuel stood there, not the storm, not the shadow, not the legend. Just a man tired, shaken, but with his eyes locked on me as if terrified I'd vanish. You heard everything he asked. I nodded. Samuel stepped inside and closed the door. And in that small room, one thing became achingly clear. We had crossed the line of no return. Julia, he said slowly, every word steady like a vow. I'm not hiding anything from you anymore. He came closer. You and the baby are no longer people I just protect. I looked up, heart pounding. Then what are we? Samuel. Samuel stood before me, lowered his head until his forehead was almost touching mine. His eyes, for the first time, softened. You're what I'm willing to fight the whole world for. Samuel stood in front of me, so close I could hear the rhythm of his breathing, slow, deep, as if he were forcing himself not to cross a line he knew existed. You and the baby. You're no longer just people I protect, he said. My heart slammed once, then dropped into some invisible void. I wanted to ask more, wanted him to say the rest, wanted to understand what was burning behind those storm-gray eyes. But suddenly, a small beep sounded at the door. The security system. We both froze. Samuel turned his head, his entire body shifting into another state in a single breath. I recognized that shift from the man full of emotion back to the most dangerous figure in the room. I locked the system. He murmured, no one gets in without me knowing. Then, why did it quiet? He pressed a finger against my lips. Just a light touch, but enough to make my heartbeat stutter. We both listened. 2 seconds. 5. 10. No footsteps. No door movement. Samuel lifted his head. It's a warning when someone approaches the outer perimeter. Could be a passing truck. Or not. He stared at me for a long moment. Lock the door. Stay here. I'll check. I grabbed his wrist without thinking. You're going alone. I always go alone. I don't want... He leaned down quickly, placing his warm hand on the back of my neck, guiding my gaze up to his. No one can touch me, Julia. And he left before I could say anything else. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with darkness and the kind of emotions that don't yet have names. I held my daughter, walking her around the room so the panic wouldn't consume me. From far below, I heard footsteps, someone else's. The faint click of a security window scanning. Samuel muttering something short to a guard. Then silence. A silence that made me want to tear down the walls just to see what was happening. I laid my daughter back in her crib and stepped into the hallway. Even though he said stay, something pulled me downward like a magnet. The lower floor was dim, lit only by the glow spilling from the living room. I held my breath when I heard a voice low. Controlled, heard a sound at the back. I checked. No footprints. Might have been just a truck passing by. Samuel answered sharply. Nothing is just. The quieter it is, the more dangerous. I stood on the third step, far enough that he wouldn't see me, close enough to hear everything. Another guard spoke, "Boss, there's a chance they traced her Julia Palmer." My heart squeezed painfully. "No," Samuel said immediately. "They're after me. They have no reason to know about her, unless someone was watching you that day at the hospital." The air froze. I heard clearly the moment Samuel's breath stopped for one beat. "I want a list of everyone who was in the hospital parking lot during that 2-hour window," he said. "Find every last one. Anyone who talks, I'll shut their mouth myself." A cold shiver crawled across my skin. Not because Samuel was violent, but because the way he protected me was terrifying in its intensity. For that moment, he wasn't the man who held my daughter as if she was made of starlight. He was a storm, a man who would tear the world apart for anyone who dared come near me. I retreated into the room before he could look up. When he returned, his face was composed again, but his eyes weren't. They carried exhaustion, tension, and fear. "What happened?" I asked immediately. "Nothing dangerous," Samuel replied. "The system is sensitive. It's a good thing. I heard everything." Samuel stared at me. "You went downstairs, just a few steps. I was worried about you." A faint, almost invisible smile touched his lips, so soft I wasn't sure I imagined it. "You were worried about me?" he asked, like he couldn't believe his own ears. "I heard your voice." I swallowed. "And I know what that kind of anger means. It means you're hiding something deeper." Samuel froze as if my words hit exactly what he didn't expect me to see. Not anger, but the fear of losing something. "Julia," he said slowly, "you see more than I thought." "Why are you so afraid?" I asked softly. "We've only known each other for not even a month." Samuel stepped closer. Not like a threat, like a man who had something he could no longer hold inside. "It's not about time," he said. "It's about feeling." I held my breath. "What feeling?" He stopped right in front of me. Not touching, but the air between us thrummed with something charged and fragile. "The feeling that pulled me toward you the moment you looked up in that hospital room." Samuel said, "The feeling that told me I had to stand there, to stand between you and anything that could hurt you." My body trembled. "Samuel, I'm not sure I can." "Don't answer," he cut in. "Just listen." I obeyed. "What I'm about to say," he continued, voice dropping darker, "will make you want to run from me more than anything." I tightened my grip on my sleeve. Samuel lifted his hand, gently tilting my chin upward so I couldn't look away. "Everyone in my world can be replaced." He paused. "But you can't." My heart clenched, caught between terror and a softness I couldn't explain. "And that," Samuel said, "makes me weaker." I flinched. "No, I don't want you to be weak because of me." He let out a bitter, quiet laugh. "You don't understand. Julia, I became weak the moment I held your baby for the first time." My breath hitched. Emotion rose in me so sharply it almost felt like pain. "Samuel," he shook his head, "don't apologize. I wouldn't undo this for anything. I no longer knew where I stood. In a safe house, or on the edge of a cliff where I was about to fall into him." Samuel placed a warm palm against my cheek. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you," he said. "But I'll be behind you. Always." His voice dropped until it almost trembled. "The question is," he leaned in slightly, "do you even want to run?" I couldn't speak. I wanted to answer. But right then, glass shattered. A sharp, violent, piercing crash from downstairs. Samuel spun instantly, pushing me behind him. "Hold the baby," he snapped softly. My stomach plunged. I ran to the crib, scooped my daughter up, held her tight. Samuel had his gun out in one heartbeat. "Don't close the door," he said. "If I need to reach you, I have to see you. Stand against the wall. Don't go out. Don't run." And then he charged down the stairs. This time, without any guards. His footsteps vanished into the dark, followed by voices low, unfamiliar, metal clashing. A door slammed against a wall, and Samuel's voice cold, furious, lethal. Touch her, and this will be your last night alive. I clutched my daughter, pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then gunshots. One, then another. I gasped, choking out a cry, tightening my hold on my baby. Silence swallowed the echoes. A dead, horrific silence. Samuel, I called weakly. No answer. I inched closer to the doorway, trembling so hard I could barely stand. Then a shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. Slow, heavy, face obscured, and I couldn't tell if it was Samuel or the man who fired the gun. The figure at the bottom of the stairs stopped. The entire house was drowned in darkness, lit only by a thin ribbon of light spilling from the bedroom behind me. I pressed my daughter close to my chest, my hands trembling so violently I almost dropped her. My heart pounded in a wild, uneven rhythm, unsure whether the next second would bring relief or the end. Then the figure stepped into the light. My knees nearly buckled. Samuel. He stood there, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, his shirt stained with dust and a long scratch streaked across his arm. But it wasn't the injuries that made tears sting my eyes. It was the look in them. Those storm-gray eyes searching the darkness for me, as though if he'd been a second later, he would have lost me forever. Julia. His voice was deep, hoarse but alive. And that was all I needed. I ran to him before reason could intervene. Samuel caught me with arms strong but slightly shaking, pulling me and the baby against him as if reclaiming the air he'd lost after nearly drowning. "Are you hurt?" he murmured. "Are you okay? I thought you—" My voice broke, my face pressed against his chest. "I gave you my word." Samuel whispered into my hair. "I don't leave you. Not ever again." Only when both our breaths steadied did I realize his hand was still on my back, as if he needed the physical proof that I was truly standing in front of him. "That man," I whispered. "He's no longer a problem." Samuel replied. His eyes flickered with a cold, lethal darkness, but softened the instant they returned to me. "But Julia," he continued. "Slower this time. This can't go on." The words made my chest tighten sharply. "What do you mean I'm done letting ghosts from my world get anywhere near you and the baby? Which means—" Samuel inhaled, as if the decision tore something inside him apart. "I have to end all of it." I froze. "You mean, give it all up, Chicago, power, the shadow I've lived in for more than 10 years. His voice held no pride, no coldness, only the exhaustion of a man who had lived too long with blood and darkness, and had finally found a reason to choose something else. For me, I whispered. Samuel shook his head slightly. "Not just for you." His gaze shifted toward the baby sleeping peacefully in my arms. "For her," he said softly, "and for us." My throat tightened. "Samuel, you don't have to rebuild your life because of me." "Julia." Samuel lifted my chin gently, forcing me to meet the storm inside his eyes. "I'm not rebuilding because of you. I'm rebuilding with you." I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Everything I thought I knew about Samuel Harrison, the distant, dangerous mafia boss, collapsed in that moment, revealing the man underneath someone who had lost too much, and for the first time wanted to keep something for himself. "But what about," I whispered, "your people, your enemies, your past?" "My past," Samuel murmured, "will not define her future." He said it with such quiet conviction it felt like a stone falling into deep water. "You're certain?" I asked. "Since the day you sent me that message by mistake." He breathed against my collarbone. "I've never been more certain of anything." We stood in silence for a long time. Only the clock ticking and the baby's soft breaths filled the room. Finally, Samuel stepped back. "Julia." "Yes." There's something I need you to decide. My heart skipped. Tomorrow I leave Chicago. I'll erase every trace of myself so no enemy can follow. But he swallowed hard. You have to choose come with me, or stay. I held my daughter closer. Go anywhere you want, Samuel said. Portland, Maine, Seattle, a small town, a forest by the sea, a quiet home, no mafia, no shadows, just. His voice dropped. Us. My hands shook. I don't want to take you, Samuel said softly. If your heart's still here, and I won't keep you out of fear. I took a deep breath. Emotions flooded me so fiercely my whole body trembled with them. Samuel. I placed the baby gently back into her crib, then turned fully toward him. You once told me not to answer until I was ready. Samuel's brows drew together slightly. But now, I said, I have an answer. I stepped closer to him. Very close. Close enough to hear the strange, unsteady rhythm of his heartbeat. Something I'd never heard from him before. I'll go with you. Samuel's eyes lit up with an emotion so raw it softened every line on his face relief. And something even deeper hope. Julia. His voice nearly cracked. Are you sure? I nodded, my eyes burning. I don't know what the future will look like, I whispered. But I know this, you've never scared me by the way you treat me. Samuel cupped my cheeks in both hands, as though terrified I'd vanish if he blinked. I won't fail you. You never have, I whispered. The space between us dissolved. Samuel bent his head, slow and gentle, a question more than a kiss. And for the first time there was no fear, no running, no shadows strong enough to swallow what was growing between us. I knew. This was where I belonged. Morning came. Chicago was wrapped in mist. Samuel stood at the doorway with a small bag on his shoulder. The car waited on the quiet street. My daughter slept in her carrier, peaceful, unaware her life was about to change forever. From here on, Samuel said, threading his fingers through mine, we write our own story. I smiled a smile I thought I'd lost long ago. Where are we going? I asked. To a place, Samuel replied, squeezing my hand, where no one can ever reach to hurt you again. He opened the car door, pausing for a long moment before I stepped in. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For not giving up before I had the chance to trust you. Samuel leaned down, pressed a slow, quiet kiss to my forehead, warm, steady, complete. And we left Chicago just as the sun touched the glass towers, the first light after a long night. Beginning a new chapter, a new life, a new family. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel and share your thoughts below. Every comment is a spark that helps future stories come alive and reach more hearts.